Hi all, Hipper here. Today I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive on win rate because it is probably the question, well not probably, but it is definitely the question I get asked the most on Facebook and the other channels. And the question is always something along the lines of why is my win rate this when my friend's win rate is that and we seem to be of equal skill. Now first, one thing to understand is that the stats in the game as they are now are pretty flawed. And you'll have to do a little bit of number wrangling yourself to make some usable sense out of them. And I'll tell you here why that is and how you can actually do that. So if we start out with an example here. Here we have Dewey and Scott, and they are mates, and they play a lot of warships. So you can see they both have 3,000 battles, and Dewey has a 58% win rate, while Scott has a 61% win rate. So my question is then, which of these guys, Dewey or Scott, is actually the best player? And most people will say, oh, that must be Scott, because he's got a 61% win rate. So obviously he's better than Dewey. Well, yeah, that is what the game tells you. And that is like the obvious conclusion to draw. But there is more to it than that. Now, if you answered Scott to this very obvious trick question here, then you would be wrong, because in this example, and I'll show that after, Dewey is actually the better player. And before I'll explain why, I'll just quickly show you this formula here that shows how the win rate is calculated in the game. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the details, but what this basically says is that the win rate in the game is a mix of your win rate as a solo player and your win rate as a division player. So obviously that means your win rate in the end will depend on how many battles you have of each type. So if we go back and fill in Scott and Dewey's stats into the formula from before, we get what's on the screen here. Now the problem is that unless you keep meticulous detail yourself, you have no way of finding these numbers in the game. The only thing the game will show you is the overall win rate, which is the yellow box at the end, which as you can see, and which I will show you more about, can be changed in many ways. So the key to notice here is that Scott has played more division battles than Dewey has. Dewey has played more solo battles than Scott, but the win rate in a solo battle is typically lower than in a division. So because Dewey has played more battles with a lower win rate, his win rate actually looks lower than Scott. And to make it even worse, if you look at the solo win rate for Dewey and Scott, Scott is actually worse by 1% compared to Dewey in solo and in division. But in the end, because Scott has more division battles, his win rate looks higher than Dewey's. And it doesn't even matter that they have the exact same amount of battles also. So I hope that makes sense. Otherwise, comment away and send me a message or two and I'll explain more. So let's take this to the next level and see. Because if you're a really good player, then you are easily able to win more than 6 out of 10 solo battles and more than 9 out of 10 division battles. Now this of course assumes that your division mates are just as good players as you are in this example here. So the better the player you are and the more battles you play, the more you can skew these results either on purpose or just as a byproduct of your playing. So for example, in this example here, Dewey has 5,000 solo battles and Scott has 5,000 division battles. And they both have 6,000 battles, but again, Scott's win rate is way higher, actually 20% higher, because he plays more division battles, and he has more wins, because he wins in this example. I just kept it at 90 and 60 just to make it easy. So in essence here, Dewey and Scott have exactly the same win rates, solo and division, and they have exactly the same number of battles, but the only thing that differs is the proportion of battles, and that's why Scott seems like his win rate is much higher than Dewey. So we can take this example even further by lowering Scott's win rate for solo by 10% and for division also by 10%. But because he still has way more division battles than solo battles, his win rate is still 10% better than Dewey. Although now in this example here, Dewey is a vastly better player. So yeah, the overall win rate tells you very little. It really should be split up into a solo win rate and a division win rate. Alright, let's move on here. And another reason that a win rate isn't as high as you would expect it to be is that you have to remember that it is an average of all your battles. So it includes the battles back when you first got the game and you were a noob. And of course that's going to have an influence for probably for most people for at least 10,000 battles until you get on top of it. And for example, these are my stats here from back when I started the game. And if you can see, I did nearly 400 battles-ish in Indianapolis, and I had a 50% win rate in that ship. And then after that, I improved a lot. But I already did nearly probably around 1,800, 1,900 battles with a 50%-ish win rate. And of course, that's going to make its mark going forward. As you can see, after 2,000 battles, I've been averaging something around 60 something ever since then. But of course, it's going to take a while for the overall win rate to catch up. And that's what I said before. Probably for most players, probably around the 10,000 battle mark, you'll be pretty close to what it actually should be. Now that brings me to the last point I want to get into here, and that is, like I touched on before, that your win rate is a total of all your battles, and it's not really that useful in the long run. So it's much more interesting, at least for me, to see how I have been performing for the last 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 battles, whatever, something like that. I mean, that's what counts. It's not what you did nearly 2 years ago now. So I suggest that all players, I do this myself, every time I reach about 1,000 battles, I take a screenshot of my stats so I can compare how I'm doing. Now the game really should be doing this for us, but it doesn't. So until Wargaming gets their act together and actually gives us some usable stats, this is unfortunately the only way to figure out these things. So what I have here is a screenshot of my stats from when I just finished my battle number 3000. Next step is then to compare that to a screenshot of a more recent number of battles. In this case, 5,709. I don't know why it's just a random number for me, but that's what I could just find for this video. So that's what you'll have to live with. So yeah, bring both stats up like you see here, and then it's a pretty easy maneuver just to calculate your win rate since those 3,000 battles. So that way you can see how well have I been doing lately. Have I improved, or have I actually gone backwards? And unfortunately, like I said, the game doesn't do this for us, so we have to do it ourselves. So the next step is to subtract the amount of battles. So you simply take your highest amount of battles, which is 5,709 in this case, and then you subtract the lowest stat battles from that, which in this case is 3,000. So the difference is obviously the battles that you have played in between the two numbers. So the next step is to do the exact same thing with the victories. So again, you take the higher number of victories from your latest stats screenshot, and then you subtract the lower number of victories from your oldest screenshot. So in this case we get 1,689. So that means pretty much that in the last 2,709 battles, I have won 1,689 of those battles. So the last step is just to do a standard percentage calculation on those two numbers, which is pretty much you divide them and times by 100, and you'll end up with your most recent win rate. So in this case, in my last 2,709 battles, I have won 62% of those battles. So this is a much better indicator of your current form than what the overall win rate says. Because you can see in my case it's 57 when it's actually nearly 5% more. So I hope that answered at least some of the questions that you guys sent in. And like I said before, if there's any further questions or you need more clarifications, or you have other ideas of things to take a bit of a deep dive on, please let me know in the comments, and I'll let you know if I think that's something that's worth investigating as well. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you out there.